Okay, we're going to get started here. Welcome to the annual WfMC Global Awards for Excellence in BPM and Workflow. I'm Nathaniel Palmer, the Executive Director of the WfMC, and I'm joined by Keith Swenson, our Chair. And today we're going to go over the winners of today's awards. So quickly, just a quick thank you to our review panel. I'm not going to go through all the names there, but we have quite a number of judges spanning the globe. This is truly a global event, and we have participation from Asia to Europe to throughout North America and Latin America. And of course, a special thank you to Lena Fisher, who has been our awards director for some time. Keith, if I could ask you to talk to us a bit about the criteria that we used and the process we went through with the awards.
Yeah, thank you, Nathaniel. It's my pleasure to do so. I also want to thank the judges and everything. As we review these cases, we go through what we call the 3 I's. We're looking for impact, innovation, and implementation. If you can go to the next slide. If we break it out, we're looking for innovative uses of BPM technology. And the reason for that is that technology is always changing, and a lot of people use BPM as a way of coping with all of the new technology that's out there. And so it's necessary that every year we consider innovative things that people are doing with BPM to see how they're coping with new technologies that are out there, as well as integrating with legacy systems, and we're looking for handling things in a new way. When it comes to implementations, of course, we're looking for successful implementations. We're looking for size and scope and quality, because these are the problems that people run into, and they'd like to see how other people have handled their own unique situations. So we'll be looking at scale and scope of the processes that are being implemented. And of course, finally, we consider impact. Obviously, we're looking for significant cost savings or significant increased revenues or better impact on the marketplace or competitive positioning, some sort of thing which is of strategic importance to the company that's implementing the workflow process. And we always know that if you change technology, it does change the culture of an organization, so we're paying attention to that as well. So an excellent use case will have something to offer in all 3 of these categories.
We also look for industry trends. Now, keep in mind, these are case studies, so we're really looking at successful, mature implementations. So our criteria is both looking for what Keith has described, but also the leading trends that we've seen emerging from the market. So some examples of those that we have seen in the last year and that we're looking for in our case studies are event-driven and data-driven processes. Those where analytics is providing a means, not just as a window on what's happening with the process, but really informing the process and helping drive the state of that process. Another one that emerged this year, and we do see some of this in a couple of our case studies, and particularly the one from Schneider Electric, is the incorporation of the Internet of Things and the concept that we introduced at the beginning of this year with the book that we'd released by the same name of BPM Everywhere, where we're seeing the interplay between data-generating devices and the universe of things that are interacting with processes. Another trend that we've seen emerge over the last year, and we do see solidly in several of the case studies this year, is the notion of BPM as an enterprise platform, not just as a separate application silo, but really as a framework for driving digitization. Another trend that's been evolving over the last few years and still represented, in fact, I would say is more pronounced with each year, is the role of dynamic and adaptive case management as a pattern for how BPM is deployed. And part of that, but also separate, is the integration of BPM with rules and decision management. We see this as a real emerging area. Now, rules engines have been around for quite a while, and there's been a recognition for some time about the separation between process engines and rules engines, but it's the notion of how these work together and really driving not just discrete business rules, but informing decision management as part of the process. That's something that we're seeing more and more and did see in this year's case studies. So again, just kind of 4 takeaways that we saw, both from the winners as well as the submitters. We're going through 10 winners out of, I think, 20 finalists, and that we began with a universe of somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 early submissions that were qualified down as finalists and ultimately as the winners. But looking at them collectively, 4 major trends that came out. One is this notion of BPM as a platform, not just as a discrete technology, but really as an enterprise platform. And seeing that being deployed enterprise-wide, this is something we've been talking about for years and are really starting to see it take hold. The idea that BPM is something that is, just as processes are enterprise-wide, seeing BPM being deployed enterprise-wide. For years, we saw it still being, if not departmental, still fairly siloed, but it's now coming through in these case studies as really being an enterprise platform. And again, this notion of case management being a dominant way that BPM is being deployed and adopted in the organization. And lastly, while it's not overrepresented in the winners, we still see financial services as being one of the leading industries for BPM. I don't know that it is the leading. There are some others. Certainly government continues to be a large sector for BPM and workflow adoption, and others as well. There's probably the other side to this is we're starting to see more industry diversity, but with that, we see less single industries stand out. If there was any one that we would pick, it would either be government or financial services, and this year in our submissions, it was clearly financial services.
Well, if we can stay on that last slide for just a moment, I'd like to expand on a couple of points. We do see a lot of enterprise-wide interdisciplinary teams. One thing worth mentioning is we're seeing more use of the cloud. 3 years ago, cloud hosting for sensitive corporate data was a very nervous proposition. But recently, after IT directors have gotten a healthy dose of humility on exactly how hard it is to maintain strict security policy, the advantages of the professionally managed cloud options look pretty attractive. So that is something that came out of these case studies as well. And it's very interesting to look across all of them. And there was one point that came out, it's a little controversial one that if taken incorrectly could get me into hot water, I think, but I'll mention it anyway. Not every paper had a process diagram, but those that did, not a single one of them conformed precisely to the BPMN spec. And, what does this really mean? I don't mean to imply that the products involved can't do BPMN. That's not the case. Far from it. As far as I know, every product supports BPMN. But the diagrams were generally drawn separately from the product by customers who wanted to describe their processes in a more friendly way, in a more natural way to them. And what you have to remember is BPMN was designed for programmers, but human processes don't always work that way. So I think, what we can draw from this is we're living in a post-BPMN world. Every example had extensions beyond what BPMN would offer, and particularly around, many of the awkward syntactic constraints embodied by the spec. The lesson here, and again, this is recommendations for those who are looking at BPM support, I think that if you're limiting yourself to pure BPMN, you're probably missing out on the best that the leading BPM products have to offer. Probably the better question to ask is, how have you gone beyond BPMN in your deployments? So that's at least one thing that came out and popped out in my mind out of the. So I think the next slide is on the submissions that we received, a large number of submissions, again, across the globe, across many different companies. I won't read them all here. I think they're on the slide if you're interested. And the next slide is the finalists. And once again, we had a long list of high-quality entries that were assessed on these various different dementia to isolate them. And with that, I think we go straight on to the winning entries. I think the first one goes to you.
We do. Yep. Here are the winners. So starting with A. Raymond. Now, A. Raymond really was a fascinating case study. This is a French multinational company founded in 1865. And that's always a curious study to me for how you can impact and provide not just an operational change, but really a cultural change for an organization that mature. And they were able to see really significant results. One of the takeaways was that they were able to reduce cycle time by with certain core processes by 90%. And in that case, it was a measure of more than a couple of weeks down to a single day. And overall, the case study really, it did a great job of illustrating the benefits. So the benefits were made visible and clear. And that's a great strategy for winning an award, but it's also a great strategy for driving adoption. And again, here with a mature culture in a very mature organization, there are not many organizations still around that were founded in the time frame that A. Raymond was. And to be able to get that kind of lasting result as they've seen really requires making the value be clear, visible, and well understood. And they did a great job with that. So congratulations to A. Raymond and LECOM, who provided the solution and had nominated them.
The second winner is D Mobiliar. This is a Swiss insurance company, and that's our traditional strong spot for workflow in the insurance and financial field. But what they did was a little bit unusual and not exactly traditional. Very strong adaptive case management component together with the BPM in this particular implementation. I think I found this one of the most interesting of the use cases to read and very informative in a lot of different ways. One of their unique capabilities is what I call a dual level approach. They have a templating level which allows non-programmers to flesh out the basic processes, and then if integration is needed, of course, then you bring in, at the second level, you bring in some programmers who need to do the integration. But that style of getting people to work together has worked well in a number of different situations. One of their unique aspects is the separation of the user interface language from the correspondence language. So, for instance, Swiss is a multilingual culture. You may be running the user interface in German, but you may be composing a letter in English, and it's very important to have all of the English options for the composing of the document, even though the user interface may not be in English. They compared their original system, which involved Microsoft Word and document storage and things like that. They compared it to the final architecture, which is really interesting because it's a blending of the composing of the document together with the composing of the business process itself. They gave a great overview of the key roles, the organization charts. You want to look for that in implementations. You want to see how people were organized, how they thought about it, how they were integrated together into a business process. At the end, I found most interesting is that the documents in this system are not considered islands of information. A document is not just a document on its own, but they actually exist in a web of correspondence that's tied into the architecture of the overall system. So very interesting, very, very well done, offering congratulations to ISIS Papyrus in Europe and to D Mobiliar for this use case.
The next one is Freedom Mortgage. That was nominated by Navidius Software Solutions. It's worth noting that there was also a a generally familiar name used in this. They used the Savion BPMS platform in this work, and it was interesting to see not only the use of that, but this is a great example that we were talking about before of BPM as really being an enterprise strategy. And among the comments by the judges, one consistent theme was the strong cooperation and interplay between the business and IT entities here. This was applied to a number of processes and led to the development of a center of excellence and a real internal methodology around BPM as a discipline internally and as a platform for the organization. The benefits, again, are well documented in this case. You can see on the slide there some of the metrics around that, including directly tied to this work, a 256% increase in loan originations, and corresponding with a smaller increase of headcount. So headcount only went up by 50%, but they tripled their production. So getting much greater yield from their workforce. Again, this is one that it goes to the earlier trends we'd mentioned, both the role of BPM as an enterprise platform, as well as the role of the financial services industry in the BPM sector. Freedom Mortgage is a fairly mature organization, over 25 years old, and again has built a lot of their strategy on what they've done here with BPM. So congratulations to them.
Fuji-Rebio Diagnostics is an industry leader in biomarker assays. They do medical testing for tumors and cancer tests. And this is interesting. It's a new field. It's a medical field. I say it's new, it's not your typical workflow field, but it's showing how BPM is reaching out into really all industries at this point. Now, the major concern of such a diagnostic company is, of course, efficiency, but a bigger concern there is their standard operating procedures, their industry standard procedures, as well as the FDA regulations. So this is a case of needing to handle a large number of processes, but making sure that every one of them complies to a very strict legal framework. It's a very large volume supplier of these tests. They do 75 million tests a year. They have the patients distributed all throughout the world. So they're really reaching the boundary between sort of large volume manufacturing and medical care fields like that. They put together an innovative way of tracking each of the steps using electronic signatures at every step, so that when you got to the very end, you could prove without any shadow of a doubt exactly what had happened to the sample, what tests had been done, what results had been produced, full traceability and transparency throughout the system. One of the better things about this use case is their conclusions at the end. Sort of all of the use cases have a list of best practices, learning points, as well as pitfalls, and I thought this list was pretty good. They warned against not including a user community at the beginning of the project. That's a potential pitfall. Jumping to conclusions was a pitfall that they said you should avoid. Forgetting to fully document it and not following the best practices on all of these. There's a good list of those, as well as the best practices that came out of that. So congratulations on this winning to Fuji-Rebio Diagnostics, as well as Wonderware and their Skelta BPM platform.
Next up is the National Institute of Agricultural Technology, or INTA, which is a Argentinian entity nominated by Pectra, who provided the solution underneath, and the Pectra BPM. Pectra is a longtime member and supporter of the WfMC. And this is another one where the clear metrics coming out of the initiative was cited by judges. That was actually a great theme this year. It's worth noting that in years past, metrics have often been elusive, where this year the winners really distinguished themselves by having clearly identified benefits. And in this case, they, again, took an enterprise approach, tackled a number of processes, and saw a significant reduction in time and effort, and involved a great increase in productivity. Some of the metrics you can see there. It's also a case where this was part of not just a workflow automation program, but really a wholesale modernization initiative under the banner of digitization. And they saw great results with that across more than 30 specific process areas. So congratulations to both the National Institute of Agricultural Technology and to Pectra for having a great result.
Next case is the Ministry of the Interior of Colombia. This is obviously a government case, and like most, the nature of government is that bureaucracy is something to be addressed, so efficiency of handling processes always is important, but this use case is distinguished by its actually attempt to do nothing less than to find peace down there. It's really funny, or it's really amazing. The first time in history, the country's non-Catholic churches submitted proposals for resolving Colombia's internal conflicts to the national government. So what's at stake here is the peace of the country itself. And naturally, as you can imagine, handling a large number of situations like that, they also face a serious corruption problem. There are intermediates that were charging, 1,000% more for certificates of recognition than they needed. So they're attacking corruption as well. So that's areas where BPM could actually help out. Now, the processing that they were automating involved 171 different tasks, but of all of those, only 21 of them involved people. So they could automate 150 of those tasks, greatly simplify the handling, greatly speed up the handling. But more important than speeding it up is the transparency involved. Everybody knows where everything has been, who has touched it, where it's gone. This is really important, not for making it clear what has happened and making and to decrease the amount of corruption in there, to decrease the special handling that somebody may be adding to that, as well as to increase the document security. So you can easily imagine Colombia has a lot of special problems for themselves, but you can easily see how the automatic handling of these documents can make a big difference to them in getting things done and reforming government itself. So very interesting case study. Congratulations on winning the award to the Ministry of the Interior of Colombia, as well as to Aura Portal of Spain, who provided the technology for them to do this.
The next step is nominated by NewGen. NewGen has received a lot of accolades in the last couple of years as being a market leader in both the various ECM or enterprise content management quadrants and rankings among the analyst firms, as well as among the BPM waves and quadrants. And NewGen is truly a global organization. They've won with their submissions in the past, and they've ranged from multinationals to organizations such as the National Bank of Kenya. So this bank is interesting. It's another one it's a fairly mature organization, not quite as old as A. Raymond, but founded about 50 years ago, and had operated in a fairly closed market for a number of years. Now is being subjected to quite a bit of competition as their sector, their regional economy heats up, and there's more and more outside competition for banks. On top of that, they're facing a lot of regulatory burden, not only from the government of Kenya, but because they are operating in a multinational arena. So they had to embrace a modernization strategy that not only brought their systems and processes up to a current capability, but to do so in a way where they're able to deal with the kind of competitive market forces that they're now facing and hadn't faced for some time. So part of this was how they increase the efficiency around customer onboarding and overall the customer experience, combined with now meeting a host of regulatory requirements that is fairly new. We're seeing a number of them in the U.S. banking industry, and that accounts for a lot of why the financial services and banking industry is so well represented in the BPM space. And they're also facing not only similar ones to what we're doing, but a host of local ones there in the African continent and local market. So this one stood out with both, again, comments around the ability to demonstrate value and metrics. It was a very well-written case study, as well as what's notable around the kind of transformation that the bank itself is going through using the NewGen platform as a leverage point. So once again, congratulations to NewGen and the National Bank of Kenya.
NBTY is the largest vertically integrated source of nutritional supplements in the U.S. They wanted to modernize their IT infrastructure as well. And again, this is a non-financial industry, but a product industry that is spread wide across a very large geographical area. What they wanted to do, and what they succeeded in doing, was to reduce the renovation time from 35 days down to 13 days, so almost a factor of 3 improvement in the speed of response. And that's one of the primary reasons why they wanted to bring this kind of automation into their workplace, is to speed up the time that it takes to roll out new products into the market and to introduce those more quickly. They have 22,000 products across vitamins, minerals, herbs, sports drinks, things like that. And they must be introducing, thousands of new ones every year. So making that efficient was really important to them. What's interesting about what they did was they got together with Appian, and this is one of those cases where they deployed it in the cloud. So they used Appian's cloud support, and this makes a lot of sense to a widely distributed organization. You can implement your business processes, and now they become available all across wherever you happen to need them in all of your stores and distributors. So once again, another great use case to show how BPM has helped to make things faster and more effective. Congratulations to NBTY and to the company that nominated them, Appian.
And our penultimate, second to last winner here, Santos City Hall. Santos is a municipality in Sao Paulo. It's one of the larger municipalities in Brazil. And this is another case where not only did they show great results, but the initiative was around business digitization. So it was what we'd call a modernization initiative, but specifically they put it under the banner of digital business, or digital transformation, I should say, is the term that they used, but what we more commonly refer to as digital business. Again, in this case, they saw great results internally, operationally, with their processes, and looked at this platform as a means to increase the value to constituents, but it wasn't really a constituent-facing case study as much as it was an improvement of their internal operating capacity using BPM and advancing an initiative around digital transformation. So congratulations to both Santos and LECOM, who provided the solution and nominated them.
Our last winner, and not the least by any measure, is Seguros Universal of the Dominican Republic. This brings us back to our home base, the financial sector. They are an insurance company, and their business process focused on vehicle insurance claims processing. So as you can easily imagine, lots of thousands of processes. What they wanted to do was to integrate together. They had 15 different sub-processes, and they wanted to bring them into one integrated process, and we see that a lot. Obviously, there'll be an increase in the performance and the decrease in the cost, and there's no exception here. They were delivering results in 13 days before automation, and after automation they were able to deliver the same results in 2.5 days. So that's a very, very significant increase in their ability to go from the beginning to the end of the process quickly and reliably. But it's important to note that one of the benefits that they got is the ability to offer visibility to the customer of where the claim is and what stage it is at any point in time. Now, it's very hard to measure this in dollar terms or in work hours saved, but it is an increase in comfort of the user to be able to call in, to be able to look up on a portal and find out where their application is. Again, each of the use cases goes into extensive best practices learning points, and I thought the list from this use case was pretty good. They recommend get the commitment of top management, create a consulting group to translate the business needs, involve the internal staff as much as possible, and recognize that you may need to move out a version intermediate between the start and the end of the project. You may need to have multiple versions. They're recommending an agile approach to developing the BPM processes. So another example of a very huge benefit, big performance increases, cost cutting by using the BPM. A very good example, typical of all of the winners of these awards. So congratulations to Seguros Universal and to Bizaji, the technology that they use to achieve those benefits.
So once again, a round of congratulations to our 10 winners this year. The resounding theme was showing benefit, and that is a great testament to not only our winners and the partners that supported them, but to BPM and its viability as an industry and a sector. It's great to see as the industry itself matures that our understanding and ability to articulate value is becoming increasingly clear, as well as the pushing of the boundaries into new areas, into new means of innovation and new technologies. So again, congratulations to this year's winners. Keith,
all of the winning submissions will be published in the next edition of the Excellent in Practice series, which is what we do every year. This allows people who are looking at how to implement BPM and workflow solutions visibility onto how other people have been successful doing this in the past. We do publish these every year in print and in Kindle format. You see a couple of the examples, Passport to Success in BPM. We have the case studies in there. We also include some guest chapters from noted authorities who talk about current practices, current topics in the field of BPM and workflow. So I do, if you are looking for advice on how to implement these kinds of technology, highly recommended. And again, as a summary, I would like to congratulate our winners again and thank the staff of the WfMC for putting this together, particularly Lena Fisher, as well as Nathaniel, myself, and the rest of the steering committee for helping bringing this to fruition, and for putting on and for recognizing and awarding these excellent case studies. Nathaniel?
Keith, thank you. And again, thanks to the WfMC, and congratulations finally to our winners and their partners. That concludes this year's award ceremony. We will put this live on the WfMC site as well as the awards site, and we will end there. Thank you very much.